Hi, and most welcome to our next presentation. Next, we're going to talk about SensoDetect, and with me here today I have CEO of SensoDetect, P.A. Hedin. Please, the scene is yours.
Well, thank you for that. As you said, my name is P.A. Hedin. I'm the CEO of SensoDetect. So in SensoDetect, we use hearing as a doorway into the brain. So what does that actually mean? Well, to explain that, I need to tell a little bit short story. So our founding father, Søren Nielsen, he's also an associate professor at Lund University. But foremost, he is a psychiatrist and also happens to be a really good musician and plays a lot of instruments, as you can see in this slide. He started using sound as a part of a treatment for his clients in schizophrenia. Now, by playing those sounds, he quickly realized that all the schizophrenic patients reacted the same to specific types of sounds. So then he started asking around with his colleagues in the university and with friends around and asked them to be part of a small study where he has actually asked them to listen to the same sounds. And he concluded quite quickly that, well, he could distinguish between the two groups by only playing sounds. So the schizophrenic reacted to the same sound in one way, and the people who didn't have the schizophrenia reacted in one way. So that is actually the basis of a 30-year extensive clinical research that is now turned into this, which is SensoDetect can in 14 minutes, with a simple hearing test, set the probability of you having, or the clients having ADHD, autism, and schizophrenia. As we are a medtech company, I will just get this out of the way quickly. Yes, we are clinically proven. The research is done, and we are launching in the market. Moreover, of the history of SensoDetect, we've been around for quite some while. I know some investors have also been around for quite some while. But just a brief story. We were founded in 2005. We were noted in the Spotlight stock market. But the last 4 or 5 years, I would say 5 years, about a new group of investors came into the company and turned it around from a research-driven company, which do a lot of those clinical and doctorates and everything, into a market-driven company. So right now we are, as I said, we are in the market already. We are a 100% objective tool, which means that we are a diagnostic tool to actually setting the diagnosis of ADHD and autism. Our wanted position is, of course, like everybody else, to be number one. But in this case, it's very achievable because we are alone in this service in the market. The only thing that you can compare us with is a brain scan, a CT scan, which, for those of you who know what that is, you go into the tube and you hear a lot of sounds. That's very expensive, takes a lot of time, and there's a long waiting queue. There's also a method of measuring the flow of blood through different parts of your brain, which is also quite expensive and a long waiting time. With our technology, we can offer the same results with almost 90% accuracy as those other methods. Then, of course, ADHD and autism is you need to have. It's not a mental disease. It is. You need to set the functions where it's actually the problem of that person having those illnesses. All the other key missions are, of course, to prove efficiency, and I will go through that in a later slide. And decrease the costs of society as such. So the intended market group, or the intended clients, about 400 million in the world suffer from ADHD and ASD. So that's our basis for the client base in the world. So this is the clinical workflow. If you've not been investing in these kind of companies before, I'll just go through it really quickly. From the start, when you're worried, this is an ADHD example. So from the start, when you're a worried parent, there's something wrong in the school, or your child is not functioning as it should, you would actually today have to wait up to 6 years to get help. So first you'll have to go to the school, which they've been starting to educate on how to actually treat these kids in the right way. But that's the first contact. And until you get help with a treatment, a medicine, and that is actually giving an effect, today, unfortunately, it takes almost 6 years. So if you're a 10-year-old kid and having problems in school, that will crash your entire upbringing. Recent research, and globally this is, have shown that almost 40% of juvenile delinquents, people incarcerated, children, and also upcoming of adult age, that percentage is very high. So that means that not only is it a really, really big problem for those people having it, but it's also an extreme big problem for society. Because those children will be basically outcasts and will not get the proper chance that they deserve. With this method and including us in this, we can have, in the first phase, we have a screening process, which is comparable to a psychologist, which a psychologist will take about 45 minutes of conversation and then questions. We can do that same test with almost 90% accuracy. So I'm not looking to replace the psychologist, but there is a huge shortage of psychiatrists and psychologists in the world that has this specific knowledge. So, of course, we can be a complement, not replacing them entirely, but a complement to it. In the second phase, when, for ADHD, for example, you have a psychologist, psychiatrist, social services, you have the teachers, and they all do assessments and talks, and the parents and everything. And then they convene, and then they ask, okay, do they fit the criteria for this illness? And in a lot of cases, and there's been noted that it depends on who you ask, basically. So if you go to a psychologist in one part of Sweden, or if you go to a psychologist in France, you'd get two different answers. And in a lot of cases, they disagree on if this is disability or not. But with our technology, you can actually tell them and help them as a diagnostic tool to set the right diagnosis. Thirdly, one big part that we're researching right now, there will be a paper disclosed in this, so I can't talk too much about it. But what we've done research is that we can, with our method, measure the reaction of a treatment drug or a treatment as such. So that means that, for instance, if you are ordinated a specific drug, then over time you should measure what effect that has. And currently now it is only question-based, which means that, well, you took the pill, how are you feeling? Are you working better in school, or can you go to your work right now? Stuff like that. But we can actually measure how the brainstem actually reacts to those drugs. That means in the long term, we can have a method that can help set the right dosage and the right pharma, the right drug, basically. And then one final thing is, of course, there's a lot of there's a quite large group, specifically women, who've been diagnosed for ADHD, that come to us in our new local clinic and say, well, I don't think I have this. Or my doctor says I have it, but I don't think I have it. Or so they want to have a second opinion and want to be undiagnosed from it. I don't know if you hear that sound, but yes, it is alarming. Okay, so basically, as I said, first I would like to say that we opened this clinic as a proof of concept, and that show clinicians that, well, the method works, the clients like it, and it gives those results that we say that we have. But foremost, we've actually had the chance this last year to meet with the clients, ask them, and how they perceive the process so far. We've also met with psychiatrists and psychologists and asked them the same, which has given us the learning of giving advice to our clients how they can be more efficient and faster and more correct with the diagnosis setting. So, of course, it is possible to carry out ADHD investigation in a far and efficient manner. Just briefly what this means, if we have taken up 5 simple steps, simple, well, simpler at least, in 1/4 of the time at half the cost. Currently, we are positioned in Sweden. We have clinics working with us there, and we have our own clinic. We are also launching in Saudi Arabia, and we are very close to being approved in China. We are present also in Bolivia, but of those who read the news see that they are close to a coup again. But we have used this part as a basis for operations to look into the wider range of South America, which is, there are a lot of interesting customers in South and Latin America, of course. So, briefly just going through the thing. We're unique. We're 100% objective. We can offer an efficient, low cost and fast delivery. Something that significantly reduces the time in the clinical workflow, saving a lot of costs and a lot of grievances for clients and for society. And finally, we actually look at the organ it treats. That means that when you meet a psychologist or psychiatrist, he or she will ask you a lot of questions. We can complement that by looking at the brain and how the brain actually functions and reacts. Yeah. So everybody deserves this, I think.
I think so too. Thanks a lot, P.O.
Thank you.
But I do have some questions for you.
Okay.
You've been a CEO at SensoDetect for about a year now.
Yeah.
So could you briefly tell us how has the journey been so far?
Yeah, well, I think it's been amazing, actually. I mean, as a CEO, there's a lot of things that you didn't think that you'd be a part of. But most of all, we have secured the technology. We have the ISO certificate, once again, with 0 remarks, which is amazing. We've done the electronic safety test, which opens up markets in South Korea, for instance. I've been visiting Saudi. We've been approved in Bolivia. I mean, there's a lot of amazing things. But I think what I mentioned in the end here is that I've met a lot of people learning a lot from it and how we can provide a more efficient and better service to everyone.
Yeah, and quite recently you've spoken about it a bit short about your focus regions. In a quite recent press release, you've actually marked that the focus is now on the Nordic, the Middle East, and with Saudi and UAE in focus, and also, of course, China. Yeah. Could you please brief us about the next milestones in China? You've mentioned that you're close to approval. Yeah,
China is a huge market. I mean, there are a lot. I think about 91 million potential customers in that country. Also, it's important to us because in our contract that we have with the chairman in Cheng, once we get approved, which is really, really close now, once we get that approval, it will launch the 399,000 euro contract for the first year and 800,000 the second year. So that would bring us to black figures quite quickly, because the burn rate that we have right now is the same as the first year. So we're really low on burn rate as well.
China is a pretty special market to enter. So could you please tell us why it's important to have such a partner as Ancient Group?
Well, in each market, I think it's really, really important to have a strong partner that not only has the know-how. I mean, medical technology is complicated. It has a lot of rules and regulations that you need to follow in that country, but also a partner that has a lot of muscles and a lot of connections, and they have those.
And for the coming plans for Saudi, you've mentioned that you've visited a couple of times. What are the coming milestones coming from there? What are your plans?
I sent a PM quite a while ago that I would travel there. Unfortunately, it's been pushed a lot. There is one key person that I'm working closely with right now that we need to convince. Once that person is convinced, then that opens up not only Saudi Arabia, but actually the whole MENA region. So I plan to go there. Hopefully this time, I cannot make any promises, but I hope I'll go there in December now. Yeah. And finalize the contracts.
Yeah. And obviously we're in Sweden, so the Nordics. You've recently moved to a new location. So what's the game plan from now on?
Well, in the Nordics, we also wanted to attract Denmark, and where we're situated right now in Malmö, it's about like 10 minutes to Kastrup, which means that international customers can also travel easily, but also it means that clients can also come to us and we can come to them much faster. So it's much more centralized in the Öresund region. Otherwise, we will continue the proof of concept, of course, and continue the collaborations that we have, and also signing more contract in Sweden, of course, because we need the business.
Yeah. And you've had a very nice slide about the timeline it takes to actually get treatment and to actually meet a doctor. Has the ADHD landscape changed at all since you became CEO of SensoDetect?
Yeah, I think one important thing is that since COVID, like after a year after COVID or something, there became a huge wave of people looking for help with mental issues. Those are not only ADHD, of course, they're bigger than that. But that also pushed the pressure on the governments and the institutions and the clinics to offer a more time-efficient and cost-efficient method. So that has been a lot of discussion, opening up a lot of gateways for us as well. I mean, in the election in Sweden, for instance, there was a lot of discussion on ADHD. So now clients are much more eager to talk to us and discuss on how we can help them. So the landscape has changed quite significantly in a year, I would say.
And do you have you had any contact with some clinicians? Do you have any feedback from them?
Yes, we're working specifically, I can say, the one in Skåne region. And he's also been a researcher as well. So he uses as a part of not only the questions and answers and what psychiatrists are really, really good at in the doctor service, but actually looking into the biological complement of that and bringing those together. The feedback we've gotten is always, it's positive all over, I would say.
I think they would be happy to have this complement for diagnosing the patients.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like he says, it's really important to be open-minded and to look for the right solutions, because when we're talking about ADHD and autism, there's a lot of research that needs to be done on how that's actually affecting people and what the diagnosis actually is and how to setting that diagnosis. And the Socialstyrelsen in Sweden have recently come up with a publication, which I hope will get better by time, I think, because it doesn't really help us, really. But
yeah. Let's hope for that. All the best of luck to you, and thank you for coming here today.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you who have watched this video.